What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Great to be back just with you guys today, I guess. I had a great time off in San Francisco over the past week. Obviously, during that time, launched my expert series this past week, where you got to see Aaron Nagler and Dusty Evely and Justice Mosqueda, Wes Hodkowitz, and of course, Peter Bukowski as well. Huge shout out to those guys for doing that. That was a ton of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have not watched those episodes yet, I cannot recommend it enough. If you haven't gotten your pre-training camp juices flowing quite yet, there is nothing that is going to get you there quite like listening to those and those five experts covering all things Packers heading into training camp. So a huge thank you to those guys again for doing that. And again, if you haven't checked those out, make sure to do so. Of course, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure to do that as well. There's going to be a ton more of that type of content coming through the course of this training camp this off season, and of course as we go into the regular season as well. So hit that subscribe button and make sure you get notifications every time there is a new episode. Today, main topic, one topic. We are going to be going over this year's training camp cult heroes, the players that maybe you don't know a ton about yet. Some of them you certainly will, but that you are probably going to fall in love with through this year's training camp. And every single year this happens. We fall in love with some random players, some undrafted players, and they become a part of our heart and soul as we go and hope that they make the 53-man roster. Players like Kurt Benkert and Tim Boyle at quarterback, Herbert Whisper Goodman at running back, Torrey Gurley and Chasten West amongst like a million others at wide receiver, DJ Williams at tight end, Ben Braden along the offensive line, Christian Ringo on the defensive line, Reggie Gilbert, Jaron Elliott on edge, Lindsey Pipkins at corner, Raven Green at safety / linebacker. Like, you can go position by position over the years and find these training camp darlings. And some of them have not amounted to much. Other ones, have made it onto the 53-man roster. Tim Boyle has gone on to start games in the NFL for, I believe, the Lions, and I think he got a start last year with the Bears as well. Raven Green, 2 or 3 years as that sort of safety linebacker hybrid type player. Jaron Elliott stuck around for a little while. So maybe not all of these have become big time players, but sometimes they do as well. Like Sam Shields is a great example of a darling, training camp player that became a darling preseason player to a darling regular season player to a darling postseason player, and became, of course, one of the greats at corner for Green Bay, and really was so integral in the Packers winning that Super Bowl as well, playing as a undrafted rookie as a starting corner who was making the transition from wide receiver. I digress. But we have all had those players that we have fallen in love with. Robert Tonyan, another great example at tight end, who was a training camp darling that became a pretty darn good NFL player. So here are the players, position by position, that, again, maybe you don't know a ton about or maybe aren't on the top of your radar as we get ready to head into training camp. But I think you're really going to enjoy these players throughout the course of camp and, of course, preseason, family night, etc. At quarterback, this was a really great opportunity to segue into a player I didn't get to talk about last week because I was in San Francisco, and that's Alex McGough. And yes, if you are thinking it's Alex McGough or Alex McGoof or it is Alex McGough, like MCGOO, like goo as in like gooey stuff. Alex McGough is the name. And this is your, what was it, USFL MVP? I forget which of the 30 leagues he, it wasn't XFL, I think it was USFL, that he was the MVP for. And he is a very fun quarterback, had a couple stints in the NFL, including with the Seattle Seahawks. This is a player who's tall, nice arm, very mobile and agile, and has a gunslinger mentality to him. There is, and credit Matub for this one, on Twitter. You can follow him at Matub. He pointed this out, and I think it's a really apt comparison. He's got a lot of Johnny Manziel to him. Now, Johnny Manziel certainly did not turn out at an NFL level, and I'm not super hopeful that Alex McGough is going to become a great NFL starting quarterback or anything like that. But he is really, really fun. And he's one of those players that I think when people see him at training camp and in preseason games, it's tough to tell how much opportunity he's going to get. He's a little bit behind the 8 ball coming in this late in training camp, didn't have OTAs, didn't have mini camps, and now he has, 4 quarterbacks in camp, including himself. Jordan Love is going to get the vast majority of snaps. They're going to give Sean Clifford a huge look. And then Danny Etling has been here and knows the system already. So he is clearly behind all of those quarterbacks, and Clifford and Love not going anywhere, right? So he is probably battling for a number 3 quarterback position, probably on the practice squad. But like I said, this isn't necessarily about who's going to become the next great NFL player. This is about some of the players that I think you're going to get to know and love throughout this offseason, training camp, preseason, etc. So Alex McGough, definitely one of them. His issues are he's not a great pocket passer. He's not a great, I'm going to go bink, bink, bink through my progressions and make sure that I'm hitting everything on time and in rhythm. But if you want a quarterback that can live off script a little bit, that is able to make plays with his legs and with his arm, and isn't afraid to thread the needle and throw some crazy passes, Alex McGough is a little bit of your guy. And like I said, you, especially in these fourth quarter, preseason games where you're looking for anything to get excited about and cheer, Alex McGough is going to give you a little bit of that excitement. And like I said, I think you're going to really enjoy watching him play football. So great football player, not necessarily really fun football player. Yes. And like I said, I think you're going to enjoy him in preseason. At running back, I'm going Tyler Goodson again. You guys know how high I've been on Tyler Goodson, but I think we're going to fall in love with him all over again. I continue to tell you guys how hard he works at practice. I think people that are at training camp are going to pick up on that as well. His speed is easy to see and flashes immediately anytime you go watch him in practice. He's got good hands. He's got some kick return ability. Now, it's going to be the little things for Tyler that are going to be big things for him trying to make a roster. That includes, can he get involved in any other sort of special teams, and can he find himself a better pass protector? Those are what are probably going to set that number 3 running back job apart. But I have zero doubt whatsoever. We're talking about, again, some of those third quarter, fourth quarter preseason action. Like, they're going to hand him the ball quite a bit. And he's going to have the opportunity to make some plays just like he did in preseason a year ago. So I think he is once again going to be one of those names that rises to the top for fans in training camp and in preseason. Whether or not that can equate to a 53-man roster spot, I'm not sure. I could see him playing his way onto maybe another team's 53-man roster. I think if he's in Green Bay, it's going to have to probably be on the practice squad, but you never quite know. And every once in a while, one of these players just has a preseason and training camp that is just undeniable, right? You're just watching him and you're just like, there's no way you can cut that guy. He's worked too hard. He practices too hard. He's too talented. He's too fast. And if Tyler Goodson goes out and has a training camp like that and preseason like that, he's going to be in the conversation for a 53-man roster spot. And again, I think fans are going to fall in love with him all over again. All right, a wide receiver. This is a tough one. Grant Dubose was a name that was on top of mind, and I just don't know where he is health-wise. I'm hoping he can come in at training camp because I think he's sort of the forgotten draftee, right? Just because we didn't get to see him at all in rookie minicamp, OTAs, etc. So I am excited about Grant Dubose. Jaden Reed, I'm sure, is a player people are going to easily fall in love with. But I'm going back to Samori Toure. I've talked about this before. Don't be surprised if it's Samori Toure starting as the number 3 wide receiver, meaning Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and then Toure over Jaden Reed to begin with. I'm not saying Jaden Reed can't jump him. I'm not saying other wide receivers like Dontavian Wicks, maybe even a Grant Dubose, maybe a Bo Melton, maybe a Malik Heath, who is another, I guess, camp darling that I think people are going to fall in love with. But I think when people see Samori Toure play again, they're going to remember why a lot of people fell in love with him in preseason a year ago, why he was, one of the players that Matt LaFleur mentioned in season last year that needed to get more playing time. Well, he's probably in a position to get a lot more playing time this year. And if he goes out and has a strong training camp, like I said, I think he can break camp as that number 3 wide receiver. They're going to rotate these guys in and out. They're going to move these guys around. But I think people are going to fall in love with Samori Toure all over again. He does all things the right way, practices extremely hard. He's got deep speed. He knows how to uncover. Pretty darn good route runner. Can play him outside. Can play him in the slot. Samori Toure, very fun player. And like I said, I think fans are going to fall in love with him all over again. Tight end, I don't know. I could go Cameron McDonald here because I think he's going to make a little bit of a wave or a splash maybe. This is the 2 rookies, right? Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. People are going to get to be able to see those 2 for the very first time, and I think they're going to really enjoy what they see. Luke Musgrave, freak athlete. We've talked all about him. Great hands, great size, great speed, great body positioning and body control. He's the total package as a receiving tight end, at least athletically and just the gifts that he's given. What he can become as a blocker and just picking up the offense and those sort of things, that will remain to be seen. Tucker Kraft, sort of same thing, right? Like we need to see the pads on, but he is a very fun player. He's got some run after the catch ability. He's built extremely well for the tight end position. And I think people are going to pick up on how hard and how passionate Tucker Kraft is, about practicing and how hard he works and just like his attention to detail. And I think fans are really going to enjoy that. And I think fans are craving, tight end play and high end tight end play. These are not going to be complete players in year one. They're just not. We're going to see a lot of flashes, though, and I think those flashes are going to start in preseason, and get ready for it because you're going to really enjoy it. And those two are a ton of fun to watch, especially Luke Musgrave. If you want a more under-the-radar one, again, Cameron McDonald, a little bit of juice after the catch, kind of an H-back tight end type, but he's a fun player, too, to kind of keep an eye on. Offensive line, Caleb Jones. I think people forget just how massive of a human being this dude is. And you know why I say that? Because I forgot just how massive of a human being this guy is. I talked about it before, but you had Telfort come in as an undrafted free agent, and he's big, right? And I think he's 6'6", 320 pounds or something. You're like, man, that's a big dude. And then Caleb Jones stands next to him at OTAs, and you're like, oh, Telfort's a tiny guy compared to Caleb Jones. Now, just being big and strong and physical and mammoth and, a mountain of a human being doesn't necessarily mean you're a good offensive lineman. Caleb Jones has a lot of work to do to continue on his footwork and continue his technique work as an offensive tackle. But this is a big freaking dude. And this is a guy that has some talent, that is a little bit of a dancing bear, that moves his feet pretty well for a player of his size and stature. Green Bay is potentially going to go with a sixth offensive lineman in some looks where they're probably replacing Mercedes Lewis maybe with those sort of looks. Could Caleb Jones get in on that as well? That will remain to be seen. But I think people are going to just look at him in camp and go, oh my God, that is an absolute beast of a human. And it's really hard not to cheer for him. And it's hard not to think of let's find something that this guy can do. You got 53 men on your roster, right? How can you weaponize these guys if maybe they're not ready to play, every single snap as an offensive tackle? And I know offensive line, you want to keep your five guys out there and stuff like that. But like I said, can you use him as a sixth offensive lineman just to maul one side of the offensive line? Can you find a way that he could be in the middle of the kick block team at 6'9" with a huge wingspan? Are there different ways that you can use this dude? Because just looking at him, you've got to figure out you've got to find a way to use that guy in the field in some capacity. There's just not many humans that are built the way that dude is built. And if he doesn't work out here, man, if I were WWE or AEW, I would be calling Caleb Jones' agent and being like, hey, no, don't let him go to some practice squad. I want him because he would be a beast in wrestling as well. But right now I'm hoping Caleb Jones, offensive tackle, takes a big step and can maybe be one of those swing tackles for Green Bay this year. All right, defensive line, I'm going Karl Brooks. And you know how much I fell in love with Karl Brooks' tape. He is a fun player, potentially a big edge rusher on the outside against the run, certainly a pass rush specialist on the inside on passing downs, but he's going to have to find his way on the field. But we are going to see him on the field in training camp and in preseason. I think we're going to see a lot of him and Colby Wooden. Colby Wooden's another player that I could have put on this list as well. I think people are really going to enjoy the effort that he puts out there. There's a lot of potential for playing time on this defensive line. Listen, Devontae Wyatt hasn't earned anything yet. TJ Slayton has not earned anything yet. The only player that we know with certainty who's going to go out there and get his 60 snaps a game is Kenny Clark. After that, there are snaps available. And if Devontae Wyatt maybe starts putting things together but doesn't show that he can do it consistently for 60 snaps, some of those snaps are going to be available. Same thing with TJ Slayton. We haven't seen TJ Slayton be able to be consistent game in, game out, 40 snaps per game. If he can't do that, there's going to be snaps available. And whether that's Colby Wooden or Karl Brooks or Jonathan Ford or somebody's going to have to pick up that slack if those guys aren't capable of doing it. And I think we're all hoping Slayton and Wyatt are the dudes that can do that. But if they're not, enter Karl Brooks, enter Colby Wooden, maybe enter Jonathan Ford, right? But Karl Brooks, very, very fun player, absolutely tore it up at Bowling Green. Not necessarily the most freak athlete that Green Bay normally likes, but he is dynamic. He is fun to watch. He's got great hands. He's got great moves. And I've talked about this as well. There are some players that just know how to hunt as edge rushers, pass rushers, etc. Karl Brooks showed in college, it didn't matter if he was at edge, at nose tackle, defensive line. It didn't matter. You could put him anywhere and he would find a way to get to the quarterback. He just has a nose for finding quarterbacks and getting them to the ground, basically. I think that's going to continue. I think he's going to surprise some people, and I think he's going to become a fan favorite sooner rather than later. At edge, assuming things stay clean off the field, I'm going Brenton Cox on the field. And I think, there's going to be a lot of eyes on when Rashawn Gary returns. Can Kingsley Enagbare make a year 2 jump? There's going to be certainly eyes on Lucas Van Ness, the first pick for Green Bay. But Brenton Cox is a player that, like I've mentioned when I did my deep dive of him, this could have been a 4th, maybe 5th round pick at worst had he just not gotten kicked out of 2 different places and not had some off-field sort of stuff. But on the football field, this is a violent football player with great hands, good athleticism, and when he turns it on, he can really turn it on. And I think my hope is that the undrafted status for Brenton Cox turned the light bulb on, and him getting kicked out of college again turned the light bulb on. There's nothing handed to him anymore. He's going to have to earn everything. And if he goes out and he works his butt off, he can be a star. Maybe that's aggressive, but he can be a really good football player in this league. He was expected to be a star coming out of high school and going into college, like a big time player. And it just, he didn't necessarily, I don't think, ever really put in 100%. If he starts doing that now for Green Bay and taking this seriously and making sure he keeps his, hands clean off the field, then they got a real steal of a player there. I think, fans love an underdog story and a comeback story. And I know, he got himself into the trouble. So it's not like this is a, something where he had to overcome an illness or an injury or something like that. He had to overcome his own issues. But still, people love when a player takes advantage of a second, in this case, a third chance, really, because he got kicked out of 2 college programs. But there's a real big chance for Brenton Cox. The talent's there. And I think fans are really going to cheer him on and hope that he can make an impact for Green Bay moving forward. Inside linebacker, I'm going Tariq Carpenter. I think he's at a better position. I think people also forget how good he was as a special teams player as a rookie. He has a real good chance of just making the 53 based off his special teams prowess alone. Now I think he's at a better position for himself going from safety to linebacker. Yeah, there's some opportunity maybe there at safety, but there's a lot of bodies there, and it's probably easier to get cut at safety than it is at linebacker right now. And maybe more importantly, I think you can weaponize Tariq Carpenter at linebacker a little bit. Quay Walker, Devondre Campbell not coming off the field in any real consistent way, right? But maybe he can get himself into a couple, formations here or there, a couple, sub packages where he's sort of used as a hybrid tight end or hybrid safety / linebacker lining up against tight ends. I think there's a way maybe to figure out something there. He's got good size. He's built really well. He's got, he had below average speed for a safety, but he's got good speed for a linebacker. I'm really interested to see, and I'm hoping what he's been able to do on special teams carries over to that linebacker position. Corner's the guy I've been talking about ever since, really was drafted, but certainly when I had the opportunity to see him at OTAs and what he was doing at corner. That's Carrington Valentine. Wes Hodkiewicz talked about him last week. Like I've talked about him on a couple different occasions. There's just something different about that kid, and I cannot wait to see him again. There are going to be eyes on him when he is practicing. Really interested to see if maybe he took a couple steps up the depth chart from what he was able to do at OTAs. Super talented, very fast, good click and close, not afraid to get engaged. Like he's got that cornerback mentality. And of all the players on this list, I think he's the easiest one to fall in love with when you watch him play. I think he's probably would be my 1A on this entire list for ones that I think are, a player that's going to stick out to fans right away and really garner attention and really gain their support sooner rather than later. Last but not least is Anthony Johnson Jr. at safety. I've talked about this, but fans are thirsty for good safety play. If Anthony Johnson Jr. does anything, if he picks off a pass, if he breaks up, a throw down the field, whatever it is, maybe makes a big tackle in a preseason game, forces a fumble, I don't know. Anything he does will get magnified because fans are that much more thirsty for it to be a young player that's showing out well at safety. Listen, if you look at like future Packers, right? Darnell Savage last year of his deal, Dallin Levitt, Rudy Ford, Tavarius Moore, Jonathan Owens. These are all one-year veteran guys. If you're looking at long-term future of this team, you got Ennis Gaines under team control next year, and you got Anthony Johnson Jr. as a 7th-round pick. There's no future safety on this team right now. They could resign any of those guys in the offseason, certainly, and I'm sure they're going to be aggressive looking for safeties in next year's draft unless Anthony Johnson Jr. and Ennis Gaines, even in a world where Anthony Johnson Jr. and Ennis Gaines tear it up and both show that they're capable of being starting caliber safeties, you still don't have any depth behind those guys next year. So safety will be a position that gets attacked, I think, pretty aggressively moving forward in the draft by Brian Gutekunst. But right now, it's really Anthony Johnson Jr. as the guy with potential moving forward because he's actually under contract. He's the only safety on the roster who's actually under contract for next year. So if he can do anything, if he can show out, if he can somehow earn some playing time early, and sooner rather than later, he's going to be a player that fans are really excited about and are going to get their hopes up for because there's not much to get your hopes up for at safety. Anthony Johnson Jr., maybe Ennis Gaines might be the only ones because they have some long-term potential. But certainly Johnson a little bit more, 7th-round pick. Loved his transition from corner to safety at college. I think he's a better safety than he ever was at corner, but I love the fact that he's played corner, has some of those man-to-man and zone coverage skills. He's a tenacious player. He had more ball hawking skills at safety in Iowa State than he did at corner. Just very good fit, and I'm excited to see what he can do at safety, and I think he's going to be a player that people really enjoy watching play as well. All right, so my entire list: quarterback Alex Magoo, running back Tyler Goodson, wide receiver Samori Toure, tight end Musgrave, Kraft, Cameron McDonald, offensive lineman Caleb Jones, defensive lineman Carl Brooks, edge Brenton Cox, linebacker Tree Carpenter, corner Carrington Valentine, and safety Anthony Johnson Jr. Get ready to get excited about those players, fall in love with them, and then probably 3/4 of them end up on the practice squad or something. We'll see. But really excited about all those players. Thanks so much for joining me today. I will be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode, so make sure not to miss that. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.